So we don't have to do a roll call vote because we're all present. Mr. Ernest will be a little bit late, but he will be here. So the first item on the agenda are the meeting minutes that are available for September 23rd, October 14th, and October 28th. Have they been?
So moved.
I reviewed them. I think they're good.
Second.
Yeah, I did. They're good.
All in favor of approval of the meeting minutes?
Aye.
Okay. So the item number 2 is the establishment of our town charter board or committee. We have, how many applications do we have?
Number 1.
Oh, I'm sorry. Excuse me, Ben, I was just gonna skip right over you. We have consideration and approval to execute the retail water service agreement for the Bishopsgate property.
So moved. Second.
Is there any discussion? Any comment from the public? Okay, let's do a roll call vote.
Councilor Scott,
Yes.
Councilor McGill,
No.
Mayor McFarlane,
Yes.
Councilor Conroy,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Conroy, sorry. Yes, right? I just wanted for the record. Okay. Councilor Nebel,
Yes.
motion passes 4-1. Sorry, I'm a little rusty.
Okay, now we're at number 2, which is the establishment of the Charter Review Committee for Howey-in-the-Hills. It's been quite some time, 2004, since a full review of the charter occurred. This is usually done on the 10-year cycle, and so we're a little bit late, though there were some revisions done in 2010. So, Darian, we do have several applications.
Correct.
How many do we have?
I have received an application from Pat Miller and Sal Galelli.
Okay.
That's all that I've received, actual filled out applications.
Okay.
That's
And
it.
so the proposed committee is 5 board members with 2 at-large. The at-large committee members would be available and participate, not vote, and we would have them in case somebody that is actually on the committee has to leave and so everybody doesn't have to start again. So that's the composition that we're looking at.
7 members and 2.
Yeah. Oh, is
I
it
think you said
7?
5,
7
yeah.
and 2, yeah. Total of 9.
Do you think we're going to get there?
I think it was going to be 5 and 2, but
Do you think we're going to get 7? It would be better if we had, yeah.
It's serious business.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, in today's world, changing the charter or making changes, not making changes, so.
We are.
I think a lot of people, once we pass this,
Mhm.
you set a date to get the things in, next meeting, whatever.
I think we need to set a date for the first meeting because we also have to approve the members of the committee, and that would have to happen at the December 9th meeting. So the first meeting would happen shortly thereafter. We're gathering information from the Florida League of Cities for guidance for charter review committees so that they get the benefit of things that have been done previously so they don't have to start from scratch.
I know we've been talking about it last few meetings. Have we advertised it? Any word bills put in there saying we're looking for people? Because I think it's about the 3rd meeting and we only have 2 applications for that.
Right.
So we kind of agreed council members would recruit people.
And I have my recruit,
Okay.
my one, but
I got mine.
is my microphone on?
This
Yes.
paperwork.
I'm sorry.
I'm hearing your voice, but I'm not hearing it like through the speaker.
Well, somebody wave in the back if you cannot hear me.
Or you're right.
Us, exactly. So the resolution is for 7 members and 2 at-large. I would like to look at passing this so that we can get the committee established. We do need the applications by the 9th of December. We are running kind of short because if we want to get this on the 2020 ballot, we've got to go through all of that process with legal to get the verbiage for the referendum, etc. And there's a lot of work in a charter review. But we do, of course, want to make sure that it can be accomplished. And usually, a normal, in quotes, period of time for this review is between 120 and 180 days. So people really sit down, work it through, and they give us their recommendation so that the town council can look at it, confirm the verbiage, confirm that the information put forth is something that would be feasible and executable for the town, and then work with legal to get the stuff on record. Yes, to establish the board.
Second?
Any public comment? Any people who want to serve? Excellent. That's 2 right there. So that gives us 4, and Graham Wells said that he would also be on the committee, so that will be 5. And we'll need 3 more, basically, so let's go out with public. Okay, so we have a first and a second. We have no public comment. You want to vote?
Sure. Counselor Scott?
Yes.
Counselor McGill?
Yes.
Mayor McFarlane?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Conroy?
Yes.
Counselor Nebel?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Okay, item number 3 is the consideration of resolution 2019-14, amending the budget, the general fund, police retirement fund, police advanced training fund, the tree fund, the impact fee fund, water and sanitation fund for the fiscal year that just passed, ending September 30th, 2019. The budget amendment is available. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Comments?
It's pretty much doing the whole thing, right? Pretty much the whole budget, right?
It is.
It is.
Correct. In the beginning of the year, we adopt a balanced budget, and at the end of the year, per the auditors, you should balance your budget back out.
To the real numbers.
Correct. What was actually expended and received.
So you've closed the books on 18 and 19.
Correct.
You have to say that out loud.
I have one
Yes.
one question, and this should have been answered already.
What
but-
page are you on?
Now, it's the sanitation department under expenses. We have an income, that's trash pickup, right?
Correct.
So we took in X number of dollars, and then I noticed there was no expenditure. So did we,
He doesn't have an expenditure. He's saying that the
the
paper.
very last line, it just says
Yeah.
50 to sanitation, and I just wondered why that bill not come in. I mean, if a bill hadn't come in, then obviously you can't pay it, but
No, there should be,
it's a wash. What's your question?
yeah, there should be numbers there. That could be.
I noticed that we had the income from the
On
sanitation
the last
department, which
page.
is trash.
It says sanitation,
Under
and then
expenditures.
there's no dollar figures.
And I'm sure they're not work for nothing all of it.
And I looked over that, I don't know, like 5 times, and I never know.
I never caught that either.
What is
So I
that?
do apologize.
54,000?
Yeah, it should, I will update that tonight before I leave and put that out on the website. Yeah, I looked at this 100 times and they didn't say that.
I don't even see that in the budget, under the expenditures.
To see the revenue.
Yeah, I've got a copy of the budget here.
I'm basically questioning the money that we brought in compared to what went out. I know we charged an extra $8 for.
We took in 202,000 according to the budget.
Yeah,
And so that's in the revenues, and then usually it's kind of like inspections, there's an offset. You still budget for it and then you still pay it.
Great.
is that the extra $8 we charge per household for billing? Is that where that money?
It's in your water bill.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they got,
It's it. It's called sanitation.
Yeah.
We call it trash.
I'm sorry to take your time, but I'm actually looking at the last budget that I have to see if I can find the number. And there is no page for, wait a minute, I could have them on over here. I do, I have mine. Sanitation department.
I can, like I said, I can answer the questions tonight and do an email blast.
Yeah. Can we add that? Pass it with the, I mean, it's a real number.
Yeah. See, this is older, this
Yeah.
report was run
But it would give
9/18,
us a-
but as of that date, we had expended $125,653 sanitation.
Would it be best if we just amend it and then vote on it?
That's
It's
actual,
gotta be done by a certain time.
yeah,
Right here.
yeah, right here, sorry, excuse me.
95.
That's not a year end.
That's
Is
not
that
year
right?
end, correct, no.
It's just a ballpark for the 19th.
Yeah.
It's the last copy of the budget that I got.
Yeah, I knew there was a number because I'd seen it earlier.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So
I'll
we have
email
a
blast
number.
that information out.
Okay,
There it is. 160. Was that just it?
You're right.
There it is.
is it just
So committed year to date, 163,792 and 87 cents.
Yep.
and what, is that in the budget or is that in the backup?
That's in the backup.
Okay. Okay, so it's just
Just
not
not
on the
that number
summer
out loud, yeah.
Yeah. It's, but number out loud is, we paid for trash is $163,792.87.
I didn't even see that.
My draw month.
Okay, so we have a first and a second. Do we have any public comment on the budget amendment?
Are you asking for a question on this trash and pickup?
No, this is, we were talking about a line item in the budget amendment.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, let's go for a vote.
Counselor Scott,
Yes.
Counselor McGill,
Yes.
Mayor McFarlane,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Conroy,
Yes.
Counselor Nebel.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously, thank you.
I thought we removed number 4. The resolution for the
Thank you.
irrigation.
Did you want to review it? Did you say that we?
Review.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, that we had it, that it was implemented.
So during the discussion of the consumptive use plant, the CUP, and we've talked about how currently our water usage is over the estimate. We talked about confirming that we had included the St. John's River Water Management information in our resolutions because they provide a resolution for irrigation information, etc. And so we did review and confirm that it is already in our code of ordinances. There is one thing that was changed. We had in the code of ordinances, I think it says a 3/4 inch pipe for irrigation, and it is a 1 inch pipe. And so we do have to fix our ordinance to reflect exactly what's being implemented or actually installed with the irrigation water meter. So, but otherwise, we do have the ordinance in place for guidance and support of and adherence to the St. John's River Water Management District in our ordinances.
We got it.
Any questions or comments or concerns about this? No? Any public comment? Peter, did you fill out a form?
No.
Peter, you need to fill out a form. No, you don't, that's for public comment, but can you either stand up and speak loudly or come up to the mic, please? This is a public comment for review of the ordinance.
I have a concern on the water issue. I believe St. John permits water, the issue of CUP, I think it's called,
Yes.
consumer use permit.
Consumptive
And we
use
keep
permit.
exceeding it. And we keep expanding and we don't do much to conserve water. Now, from what I understand reading it, I'm not a lawyer, it looks like as part of that CUP, we've committed to enforce the laws, like the irrigation law. I haven't seen that, so I'm wondering if that would be helpful. got back on irrigating, because 50%, I think 40 to 50% of the water, just water's grass. So if we were able to keep a stricter eye on that, like right this time of year, you're only supposed to water once. I don't think people even know that. So, and I don't know who would enforce it, if it's John, if it's the police, but I believe it's built in the agreement when you sign it for the CUP.
Right,
Plus,
so,
we're over, I think we get fined, don't we, for that?
well, we have determined that we probably are going to be over our allotment in accordance with the CUP that was filed in 2015.
Yeah.
We have to work on our new CUP that's due in 2021. Thank you. We are currently working on a corrective action plan. One of the first components of the corrective action plan was to make sure that we had the ordinance in place and to confirm that it was done. And this was put in 2009, wasn't it?
Correct.
Yeah. So this ordinance has been in place in Howey for supporting the guidance that St. John's River Water Management District provides for irrigation and consumption. We, as far as our current CUP goes, have found that the estimate that was provided for the number of residents that are in the town did not include the appropriate estimate or percentage for growth. And so we are also working with Sarah Whitaker, who is one of our contracted experts in this area, to develop the corrective action plan, but also to send a letter to the St. John's, that district. I should get the acronym for it so I don't have to say it all the time. But we're getting a letter out to them to confirm our current population and what was provided so that it won't look like we are so dramatically over our usage, even though we will still be over the usage even for that number of people.
Okay, I mean, we want to continue to expand, but it seems crazy that we haven't done much for our water. I thought also we could look at water saving programs, possibly.
That all of that is being looked at in the corrective action plan.
Also, we, a good bunch of water goes to the schools that are county schools. I don't know if we get any credit for that. Seems like we should get credit for that.
That's a very good point. I'll write that down.
That's right.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Have you looked into other towns, how they enforce their water, as far as who they use? Other towns?
It's very hit and miss. I have talked to Tavares, and Tavares has such a broad area as far as, and Leesburg as well. But when you talk about littler towns like Ascatula, most of them are rural and don't really have a way to monitor the usage because they aren't a public utility. For example, Ascatula has no water utility.
Yeah.
So
I know with the way we document and manage the bills and how it shows how much water is being used, it's quite very easy to show when irrigation is being on, from what I'm told. So, and I know certain houses with certain addresses only water certain days a week. Like Mr. Tweedy just said, only one time this year, but during the summer twice a week. So I'm sure it's pretty easy to look at that. And it's time consuming, don't get me wrong, but there's a way to possibly maybe enforce it.
there is, we would have to run a data log for every meter, that irrigation meter that we would have implemented. And we would then, for the older part of town that only has the 1 meter, we would have to do analysis somehow. All of the register heads on the meters are not capable yet. They're in the process of converting them. But we do have some older meters there that are in place that need to be replaced so that we can run the data logs. So it can't be at this point in time, soon though, because we're replacing those register heads. We can do a comprehensive.
Maybe something Mr. Ernst can comment on in the future.
Yeah.
As far as
I think we would also need to look at that when we were doing the water analysis that we need to do in conjunction with the corrective action plan. So I think all of that needs to be looked at, so I agree.
Martha,
Can you, you're so close, Marie?
I did fill out a form.
Yeah, I know, but this isn't public comment. I made a mistake. This is comment on this resolution, so you're,
Oh, they can hear me.
okay.
Just a question on the corrective action for the water consumption.
Mhm.
Does it ever get defined that this time of the year you have 4 zones and you water max of 20 minutes per zone? Can that be defined? rather than an hour per zone, which is just a waste of money, and you just grow more dollar weed or whatever because you're too wet.
Well, a good practice, a best practice, and Mr. Nebel has talked about this as well. It's better to water once and deeply than it is to water frequently and shallowly, because you don't establish the roots system for your plants, not only the grass, but for all of your landscaping plants. And so the 1 hour is a guideline to ensure that you have the proper root depth, so that if we do get into a drought type situation, the once a week will be sufficient.
It's a lot of water.
It is, and yeah.
For an hour, that's gonna be a lot of money.
That is, and also you have to know what type of irrigation heads you have. If you have high volume irrigation heads and your lawn does not require that, change the head. You know,
And
some of
your
them are
sidewalk's
30
more wet
gallons.
than your
That's
grass.
right. Some of them are 30 gallons and all you really need is a 15-gallon head. So they're pretty interchangeable. You get a little muddy because you got to dig around the head, but any other comments?
I saw an advance,
Say your name.
Fran O'Keefe Wagler. I saw an advance copy of the Howey Tribune, and they are talking about the watering system. And I know that they have a little extra space if anybody wants to write an article on water heads and water depth and watering to save money. I'm sure that they would greatly appreciate it.
Thank you.
Mayor,
Yes,
public
Mr.
service can be delighted by a class at the library on water usage, the heads to use, what days, how many hours, and how long it takes to water grass properly.
Did everybody hear that?
Yes.
Mr. Ernest just said that he would be glad to arrange a class at the library to talk about the appropriate watering techniques, equipment, etc. at the library. So if anybody's interested in that, I'm sure that Tara will coordinate that with Public Services. Okay. So if public comment is done, then we need to go on to the next item, which is discussion, which we need to look at managing our legal costs, which was one of our major expenses this year. So we've got a situation where, and we had talked about this earlier, like February or so.
Yeah, I brought it up in January 28th meeting.
Okay, where we have people calling the lawyer or sending information to our legal staff, I shouldn't just call them the lawyer, and they are coming from citizens, non-citizens, John Q. Public, and our counselors. And we need to get a handle on the situation. We went over our budget by 104% this year, and which is not fiscally responsible. And so I would entertain a motion to have counselors request access to our lawyers. They could send an email to me, to Town Hall, so that we could get some sort of a handle on our legal fees. We've got a lot of information at Town Hall that I think a lot of these questions could be answered or asked. They could also be consolidated. So if we've got several counselors who have the same inquiries, they could be consolidated and sent once to our attorneys. And so
This was brought up, like I said, in the 28th meeting, and we made recommendations to limit it to the council members, and even the department heads would have to go to the mayor, because they oversee the department heads. But when it was asked if they can limit the council members, it's no, you can't, because we all have the right to have counsel as elected officials.
Citizens be using our.
And that's the other thing, the private citizens. I mean, we can very easily, between the anonymous public records requests and the citizens emailing the attorneys, and I'm sure, can't we just tell the attorneys to disregard them or, don't entertain them because it's, they're not obligated to them.
right.
So, I mean, that would cut it back.
Not substantially.
No, but it would cut it back, yes.
Yeah, not substantially. We can actually require that the counselors go through Town Hall or me, the mayor, whoever the mayor is at that point, to access the attorneys. Is that correct?
Yes, Mayor, that's council policy. You can decide how you want to govern that and set your rules.
So we can set a policy stating that the mayor can dictate what email from what council member can go to the attorney. So if she doesn't like a particular topic, she can stop it from going to the attorney, is that correct?
Well, it could, if that was the case, if you didn't agree with that, you could come bring it back to the council and ask for a council vote and review of the item to then go to the attorney. But we're in a pretty dire situation here where we've got a huge overrun and a real issue with our budget, not only because of what we have experienced previously with the attorney bills, but we currently have the expense of the charter. We have the expense of the legal fees and impact study for the contraction request. So we've got quite a few things that are happening, and we need to get a handle on it. And this, I think, having a policy that would, we can see how it worked, but I think we need to implement a policy to govern the access to our attorneys to make sure that we're being fiscally responsible with those budgeted dollars. So I would entertain that motion.
Good. Good.
Like I said, could we assign one council member to research what other towns do? Give us some guidelines that way, or perhaps our attorney would be able to give us.
I did speak with
I was going to add, Mayor, that is not an uncommon practice in a lot of cities and towns and even counties in some cases, where if the request for legal work is getting out of hand, and if it's duplicative, if it's hitting on issues that don't need to really be hit on, the county commission, the city council very often will say we want all the requests for legal work, including from the council or the commission itself, to go through the mayor so that there's some coordination, some elimination of duplication of efforts, redundancy, repetitiveness, and to make sure that the requests are worth it. As a private practicing lawyer, if one of your clients calls up and says, I want help on this, no matter how lacking in merit it may be, you want to go ahead and give them the help because they're your client. But it does, I think it's probably a good idea if the council thinks that the legal work needs to be monitored, it's a good idea to run it through a central source like the mayor, whoever the elected or strong executive is, and try to get a handle on it. That's a fairly common practice. It's not 100%, but there's a substantial number of cities and towns that will do that sort of thing.
And if, each council has a vote. So if it is something that somebody disagrees, then you bring it to council, and if council, we are a legislative body, so we could say, yes, we'll spend this money to investigate this, or no, we won't, and with a simple majority or whatever. So I think we ought to try it.
Don't we have to change our ordinance, the way the wording is? Because right now it's, legal is available to council members and the town. So that's wording in our ordinance, so you just can't vote on it.
I think we can. I think we can establish a policy and go back and look at the revision of the ordinance at the December 9th meeting.
Like I said,
Ordinances have to be voted on, so.
That's true.
yes. And I'd love to have the attorney
We have to have
give us some
ordinance
examples
brought up and then it'll be voted on by us.
of the numerous
So we can't
towns.
just arbitrarily change.
We can establish a policy. That's not arbitrary at all. That's why we're discussing it
You're going policy against ordinance, so
with the change of the ordinance.
that's what I'm saying.
Following.
I'm telling you, you gotta have to change the ordinance and then we have to vote on it and then go from there.
You can't contradict an
Can I
ordinance.
ask, I'm not sure where in the town code there's an ordinance that says that town attorneys, I have looked for that, I haven't seen it. I know there's a reference in chapter A, which is your code enforcement stuff, there's a reference to the town attorney acting as counsel to the town council. That is, number one, that's in the context of code enforcement, not just a general sweeping statement that in all issues and all matters, the town attorney is supposed to do work for all the members of the town council. That's not what it says. It just says in the context of code enforcement, the question is who represents the town council in code enforcement proceedings versus representing the code enforcement board and the code enforcement officers. And that ordinance talks about appointing a special attorney to represent the code enforcement official if necessary, or the code enforcement board, and to give the code enforcement board advice, that's kind of required by state law because it's a quasi-judicial proceeding. But that has nothing to do with questions that the town council members may want, or work that the town council members may want to ask the town attorney to do. It just has nothing to do with it. It only applies to the question of who does the town attorney work for in the context of code enforcement proceedings. If there's some other ordinance, I've looked through the town code, I just couldn't find it.
And you look under section 8, it's actually ordinance 8-6.
Which is under,
Yeah, so
yeah, that's code.
it spells out the three different A, B, and C, and I think B is where it covers the town council. So, and between that and what they've done over the past years, pretty much spells out the ordinance. But if I'm not against changing the ordinance, rewording it, restructuring it, but right now it is the ordinance, and to pass a policy that contradicts the ordinance is just not possible.
Well, I don't think that the policy contradicts the ordinance.
Well, the one you're recommending?
No, yes,
Yeah.
because as Mr. Wilks has defined, that is within the context of code enforcement. And I'm going to defer to our legal representation because they know what they're talking about. He has investigated
Well,
it.
you're also limiting the council based on a bill that was not just us, it was private citizens, it was department heads and everything else, so.
Well, I went through laboriously and identified for every bill, for every counselor, every department, as well as the citizens that were accessing this. And I do have copies for the public. So I went through and identified through all of the invoices, and I really was accurate on this. If something was brought up that was, I'm just waiting for them to get a copy. Share across. I made sure that we billed the appropriate amount to the appropriate person or entity. And so the numbers that I came up with were for Councilor Conroy, 10.7 hours and this is through September 30th, the fiscal year, which is the number that we're talking about. So, yeah, can you pass that around? That's right. So if you could pass it around. For me, and I was not mayor until September 23rd, 4 hours. For Councilor McGill, 96 hours, 96.25 hours. Mayor Nebel, at that time, Mayor Nebel, I put your items, which were very few, under town administration. Councilor Scott, 6.5 hours. Town Hall, 221.5 hours. Police Department, 24.65 hours. Code Enforcement, 5.8 hours. And Public Services, 48 hours, with the majority of that, half, being for the agreement for Bishopsgate. So we're looking at a very lopsided access. For Mr. Elemente, it was 7.6 hours. Ms. Perry, 5.10 hours. And for an email taxpayer was 1.2 hours. So if we go through and really look at the access to our lawyer, we're talking about people who are asking a question and then re-asking the question and not accepting the answer and debating it, so it tends like the Attorney General item. So it goes over and over and over again, which really eats up our budget for things that are not needed. The initial ruling of the Attorney General was something that I think was appropriate, well stated, and we continued to spin on it for a long time.
Well, I gotta tell you, Mayor, this is extremely inaccurate. And I got the records here, billed from the attorney.
I do too.
Absolutely, and it spells out, and you're saying, for one, Mr. Conroy had 10.7 hours?
Mm-hmm.
He had 30-something hours between January and now. How are you missing that?
It depends on if it was for a personal item or if it was land development code. When you're talking about land development code, Bishopsgate items, those are
Where,
germane, but.
where he
I'll go
has
through.
property and vested interest in, you're saying? Is that what you're saying?
Anyway,
That's-
30 hours compared to 96 hours, it's still a moot point.
If-
But what we're looking at is trying to manage the access to our attorney so that we can adhere to our budget. That's what we're looking at. I'm not here to say, you take too much time, or you take too much time.
But you
What
said it
I'm
on
here
this
to
paper,
say.
and it's inaccurate, but anyone wants to look at this, it spells out the exact hours.
We will
It
print
lays it out.
exactly that. I've got the bills as well, and the
Public
items
record.
that how I identified everything, I did it very systematically, by category, by user, etc. And so I have that to share as well, and I will scan it and have it available for everybody to access on the website.
And Mayor, you didn't put the chief on the column there?
I put the police department.
Because the chief alone spent $3,100 on Christmas gifts and bonuses research for an attorney. So why isn't that on there?
It's the police department. That is not
But-
a call into our attorney where you get billable time. We're talking about billable
But
time.
she did bill it. As a matter of fact, when she put out an email saying the chief stopped calling me with these police department questions, after that, he was
Okay, that
charged
is
over $4,600.
That is beyond the discussion right now of the policy for access. This is from October 1st, 2018 to September 30th, 2019, this last fiscal year,
Yeah, it
which
falls
is the
underneath-
same budget amendment and budget we just looked at.
Yeah, that falls underneath what I just said, that during that time.
So,
I move your request, because we really don't have a motion on the floor. I move that all requests for legal services go through the mayor's office for approval as a policy until we come up with something better or we study it further. But we're supposed to all be fiscally responsible. And if an issue is so big, then I think council would support an investigation into blah, blah, blah. And majority rules on things, so whether we like it or not. So, but somebody could break the town on the budget. A counselor has no limits. We must have limits, and the limit to me would be, must be approved by the mayor and based upon legal counsel's recommendation. That's nothing wrong with that. And if it's bad, we'll vote 3-2 to put it back. If we think you're putting a lid on us, then we'll find another solution.
is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Public comment?
Bernie Alameti, Lady Lake, as you know. The 7.6 hours, I don't know if, so we're all factual? No, I'm not a resident anymore. I used to be a resident. I got chased out of the town, whoever asked.
Mr. Alamenti, please
This is for us.
direct your comments at the
Crowd
council.
control.
So, part of that 7 hours was when I found the permits that were illegally charged. I don't know how many hours the lawyer charged you, but I went to the mayor, I went to Ms. Burke, said, you owe me money. They called my bluff. So, I just want to make sure the record's straight there.
Thank you.
It wasn't me, it was the town that caused that bill.
Sorry. Marie Galelli. I think there do need to be limits on what lawyers, how much lawyer can be asked questions during the year. I asked last year when they were doing the budget meetings. I think everybody should have a limit on how much, which allows you to plan. You're spending other people's money. Our money, your money, but you're spending other people's money by doing this. I think there should be a limit. You have a budget that you put in for lawyers' fees, and you figure out how to stay within that budget, period. You each, there's so many council members, you divide it, and you figure some other way to find out the information. I think trying Martha's way is a great idea. We gotta try something, or she's right, you could break the town just on lawyers' fees. And is that what we want? I don't think so.
Ms. Glelly, please.
Sorry, I apologize. There's nobody there.
That's right.
So I think it's a good idea to try something and put it in for a time period and see how it goes. You know, probably should put a time period on this test.
I
Of
can come
like
back with the policy.
3 months.
We should change the policy at any meeting.
Yes,
Okay,
It's a precedent.
thank you.
thank you.
Nobody here.
Sal Galili, 1104 North Tangerine. I do think one of the things that we might consider, it's been brought up before, but nothing has been done about it, is how to reduce our legal fees. We have an attorney that charges us travel time and so forth. I don't know how much we're paying our attorney an hour. There are many attorneys here at Tavares and close by. I think that would be one of the ways we could help reduce our legal fees. And even, you know, most of the time, a lot of this work is done by paralegals who, they go in and scout things, and they know oftentimes not as much, but almost as much as the attorney. So I think we ought to just investigate how to reduce our legal fees. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
If have councilman comment. Well, like I said, we can't go against the ordinance. It is contradicting my ordinance. I just want on record, I know the attorney's saying no, but it is. And Mr. Almenti, like to his point, I think he sued.
Excuse me, one second. Can we have quiet in the public area? Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Like Mr. Almenti said, he was overcharged $85 on a permit. He wanted the town to settle. They wouldn't. So instead, it cost the town paying him $175 and $575 legal fee.
Right.
That's just one way how, you know, the town mismanaged, not put Mr. Alimenti's name in there.
Great.
So
this is just an accumulation of hours
Sure,
by the description, the people's names that were designated in there, and the breakdown.
sure. So with that, and the attorney said there's plenty of examples, or numerous examples around our county or the state where towns do that. And I'd love to see those examples. Actually, I'd love to see what they have in writing, how they dictate everyone, how they control them from not doing it. It'd probably help us to move forward with this vote, to be fair on the vote. But I got no examples from Tom, just him stating that there's newer examples around the state or county or so.
Well, I
think we should really hold off on it, do a research on it. I think we're violating, you know, the councilman's rights to have an attorney if they have any questions, if they feel like they're being wronged, or whatever it may be. So now we have to pose the questions to the mayor, and if the mayor has a problem with your particular subject, or you might object to, or you have your own opinion on it, and it's opposite mine or someone else's, you have the right to say, no, you can't go to the attorney with it, that's wrong. So I think we should really take a look at it before we vote.
So we have a motion and a second?
Can we finish with council comments?
Yes, I'm sorry.
You know, the bottom line with all this is if we would just follow our policies, our regulations that we have in place, we wouldn't have to use a lawyer so much. But we have council that refuses to do that, period. I mean, we don't do it.
Get me out of that now. For the past year, my number of hours is 0.
I'm not talking about the
Well, I
lawyer's
do all
fee,
research,
David.
that's why.
No, I'm not talking about that. I'm saying the policy and procedures we have in place, if we would just follow them, we wouldn't have to use them as much. But we don't do that. We just make up things as we go and we do what we want to do. That's the bottom line. You don't get any plainer than that.
Okay. So we need a roll call vote.
Can you open up public comment?
Oh, we already closed it. I'm sorry.
Roll call.
Yep, roll call vote.
Councilor Scott?
No.
Councilor McGill?
No.
Mayor McFarlane?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Conroy?
Yes.
Councilor Nebel?
No, that's not the right solution.
Motion fails 3-2.
So, Mr. Wilkes, I would like those examples, if you could provide some town examples for that.
No, hold on. We just got through talking about that and you're asking him to do that when we can do it ourselves.
Well, I'm sorry, but it was a suggestion by Councilor McGill to ask him, and so I thought it was a good example, because he has it,
for free.
he has it readily available where we cannot.
Well, if that's the case, then.
Would it help if, you know, I could do some research first before he does spend the money, and then go from there? No?
you charge us for, Bob?
I just, like you
His
said,
name is,
I don't know, you know, just to save money.
I said Tom.
I thought you said Bob.
Tom, how many cities do you guys represent?
Well, Heather and I represent 3, but all my partners, I'm not sure.
Dozen, more?
All
I mean,
of ours.
so you have a pretty good database that you could,
We should, yes, yeah.
And I think it would take just, it's a short period of time. I think it wouldn't take very much time to,
Well, no, I'm not gonna spend much
Okay.
time on that.
okay, so,
We'll figure out some way to do it on the lawyers making phone calls.
okay.
And this is not a dig at our lawyer's office or anything, but, I don't know what we get charged for and what we don't. We get charged for that, just.
Please use your microphone, sir.
I'm sorry, Sal. I'm curious of what we get charged for and what we don't. Like, if we just called and asked a question over the phone, do they charge us for that?
Yeah,
So,
And Mayor,
by a tenth of a minute,
I'm talking to her.
or tenth of an hour.
the Mayor, if I may, if you look at it, I'm sure you reviewed them, a lot of the billing, it says, for example, phone call with Mayor Nebel at the time, discuss town business. Phone call with Councilman McGill, discuss town business, and that's it. It should be a little more, a little more explanation on it than just town business. Just so we can show, what they're billing for, because some is an hour, some is 2 hours. So if the attorneys put a little more on there to show exactly, but a lot of it just says, had a phone call or emails between someone about town business, nothing specific. So that would help if we got that information from the attorneys, exactly what they're talking about.
That's easy to do, Mayor.
Thank you.
Looking at me like I'm supposed to have an answer.
No.
No,
I'm just looking over there, just in general,
Oh, okay.
sweeping the room to see what else.
My suggestion would be.
Please use your
We
microphone,
can't hear
sir.
you, yeah.
You come up with a budget just like you do for everything else. And then you divide it by the number of council members, number of town hall people, and so I have 100 hours. And I can trade them off with Mr. McGill, who doesn't know how to go under 1,000 hours.
That's a great idea.
My
Well, I mean,
biggest.
the point is,
Yeah.
that's one way to budget.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
That gives each council member a budget, which he can use, not use, trade off, whatever.
Well, my biggest issue isn't the access to our attorneys. My biggest issue is the budget overrun, and right now we know we're gonna have a budget overrun because of the contraction. And, several other things that are going on, like the Charter Review Committee. And so if we don't do it by managing our access to our attorneys, then my next suggestion is to have our councilmen not take our salaries until such time as we know that we are going to be within the budget. Because that would save us, what,
It's 20 years.
$36,000. So, why don't we entertain a motion or a policy or something to give our salaries back to the town so that we can at least address some of the overruns that we're looking at. We had ours.
For one, it's not on the agenda to vote on.
No, but you're right.
Yeah, so you
But
can't vote on it for one.
It is on the, when we were talking about the development.
Perfect. That was perfect in my opinion.
That would be so hard to manage, Councilor
Let's
Scott,
give it a shot, let's give it a try.
to allocate certain hours to certain councilors.
No, you
And then if he said he
budget
doesn't,
divided by 5 that we have for the legal thing, divided by 5, and that's it.
it's not by 5 though, right? It's by town hall administration, it's by code enforcement, by public services, by library.
What has been used by the council members and by town hall, and then you as the mayor can make a decision of, all right, every council member gets 15 hours. Town hall gets 20, whatever. And at least you start somewhere with a budget. Right now, we have no budget. I mean, we have a budget number, one.
That's right, we've got a very high
Whoever runs out
budget.
there and grabs it first gets it all.
And I definitely think, we should be limited, but the mayor, obviously being Showtown mayor should have more. It shouldn't be divided 5 ways, she should have more hours. And obviously town clerk and all that, but I like your idea, Councilman Nebel. I think we should, this way we can be able to manage it and look at it. So,
When we look at the average access by the town councilors, it is very skewed. So if we identified 10 hours, and that's an arbitrary number because when I'm looking at the utilization, other than Councilor McGill, 10 hours is the next highest number. I think that we need to walk out of here with some sort of a solution that will allow us to be able to do the business of the town, the contraction, the charter review, if there's going to be a referendum on the next ballot, and hopefully there will. We've got to find the monies to do that, and we currently don't have them.
And if you want, I can include my chart, and then next to every councilman, like I said, Councilman Conroy had over 30, I'll put the exact page where I got that figure from, and then this way everyone can see it. If I'm, everyone, just so, because I'm telling you that is way off, and that stack of bills will prove it.
Well, and I can do the same, because I've got everything in Excel as well, identified by category, by whatever.
Talk to the finance. Is that even, I like the idea, but is it executable at the finance end, at your end?
We would have to track it,
I know,
and that would be tough.
but yeah, that's what I'm saying, at the end of, that's what I'm thinking, unless they had unless they had some way of doing it, Tom suddenly,
Well, unless,
a month, somebody runs up X number of hours, and, I don't know, the horses already out of the barn. So,
Right.
unless legal fees are coming by mental telepathy, you have that.
That's correct.
Town hall.
We do, right?
We do.
We already have a town hall that is totally overburdened. I mean, we are still looking for an auditor for next year. We are behind on that. We don't have the staff to be able to manage this detail of billing. And, I could do it because I can get every invoice, but we're going to have a conflict, right? Because I am going to find what I find in the bill, and Councilor McGill is going to debate that. And so we are never going to come to a real number. That's why we need a procedural fix, even if we do it for the next 5 months to try it. We need a procedural fix that will require that there is some governing portion, like the governor on your water system, or that we have a process where, is it appropriate for X to go to our lawyer? I'm not of a mind to shut down the council access to our attorney whatsoever. But I am really looking at the fiscal responsibility, and we are looking at a big overage this year just to do town business.
And Gary Robbins, if you look at the sheet, everyone, they already break it down for us. So apparently they have some kind of program that you can put Councilman McGill, Councilman Nebel. It shows they do it right for us.
They do it by category, town meeting,
But you,
land development use, et cetera.
yeah, they actually, Mr. Alamenti has his own column too.
We can
So
indicate which counselor is involved in the work
That's fun.
versus the town administration.
And what would the overhead for that be?
I'm
Would
sorry?
that be included in our current pricing, et cetera?
Of course, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, yeah, that's just making sure there's data on the bill.
we should bring it up at the next meeting as far as doing all that and come up with some hours or.
In the meantime, please be judicious with access to our attorneys so that we can make sure that we're going to do something to manage these expenses, because we are going to receive a shock if we do not. And it won't be at the end of the year. It's going to be in February sometime when we're looking at the costs for addressing the contraction.
Was Mr. Chappett's issue thing in here?
Yes,
And you're saying code enforcement only spent 5 hours?
He has a microphone in front.
yeah.
Microphone.
I was asking about Mr. Chappett's issue with the trees. Was that in here under code enforcement? She said yes.
No, I didn't say it was under code enforcement.
Oh, well,
I said that,
That's prior years, prior fiscal years.
well, I just asked, was it this past year? She said yes.
No.
well, there was, you're right. That wasn't there, but there was another tree
That was 2
component
years
in
ago.
there, yeah.
Okay, just checking. Because that couldn't have been, because I know we spent a lot of time on that, so.
Yeah. Those are specifically, the ones that are under code enforcement are specifically our code enforcement officer contacting the lawyer for XYZ. Okay,
Citizen comment.
we are on to citizen comment. If you have not filled out a form, please fill out a form so that we've got it. And Ms. Miller, I guess you are first.